Well, howdy there everyone, and I hope you had a happy Halloween or Hallows End. And guess what else we get to celebrate next? Blizzcon! Man, I am so ready and excited to hear all the amazing news at Blizzcon this year. The next expansion, what's the next thing it brings, what's the next big threat, see if my theories are right or all wrong. Man, I am just so ready for Blizzcon, and man, I am excited. Woo! But my excitement for BlizzCon aside, in my most recent video I covered what I would like to see with the next World of Warcraft expansion. And one of the things that I had listed was the inclusion of subraces. Once more, for those who do not know, subraces are a different variant of your race in the World of Warcraft that hasn't been playable. They're commonly found as NPCs in the game or something written off in the novels of World of Warcraft. Two of the best examples are the Mag'har Orcs, or the Brown Orcs, and the Dark Iron Dwarves, which are grey dwarves with red eyes. My intention in this video is to tell you, wonderful viewers, on the subraces we might see for the Horde, as I think that subraces will be a big topic at BlizzCon this year based on the data mined information supplied by Red Shirt Guy. Originally, I was tempted to add the Alliance races here as well, but I don't think I would do them justice, and plus the video would be super long if I did that. Nevertheless, let's get started by starting with the Orcs. For me anyways, they are probably the easiest out of all the subraces here, so we'll be starting with them firstly. Now, many of the different kinds of subraces for the Orcs are mostly just different colored skins of the regular Orc models. This mostly defines them of each of their clans, and it differentiates them from the rest. Ones that I could see becoming subraces with the Orcs are the Mag'har Orcs, or the Brown Orcs, commonly found in Outlands and Ultimate Draenor. Dragonmaw Orcs, or Grey Orcs with glowing yellow eyes, found mostly in Twilight Highlands. Blackrock Orcs, which are pretty much just grayed out orcs, found mostly in Blackrock Mountains and Ultimate Draenor. Next are the Shattered Hand Orcs. They're a very pale, gray looking orc. Typically they don't have a hand on their hand. Found in Ultimate Draenor only, as far as I know. Fel Orcs, which are bright red with glowing red eyes. Sometimes they're even found with spikes on their backs and bodies and arms and such. Found mostly in Outlands. And that's the Orcs I could name both by their clan name and color, as far as I'm concerned at least. However, Blizzard just might add these as extra race colors for the Orcs. What I would find more interesting would be adding something more like the Machnathol, which are half orc, half ogres, similar to Rexxar, who, by the way, really needs an updated model anyways, and could be more included in the story if he led his Machnathols into the Horde as an alt race. Man, that'd be cool. This way the Orcs should be getting something that looks vastly different, but similar to the regular model. They could also make these Machnathol brown if they don't add the brown-skinned Orcs. If Blizzard is indeed going with the singular subrace with some added updates and difficulties, I could see them possibly doing this instead. And as stated, make the different colored Orc models simply a new skin tone. As an added side note, they could also give us straight-backed Orcs, similar to how Thrall looks. But I see this as pretty unlikely, as Thrall's look is pretty unique. They might just do the different skin tones as the subrace for the Orcs, but these are just my ideas that I added in here. Moving on, we have the Mighty Tauren. They, for me, are probably the second most easiest of the races I can list here. They're not as numerous as the Orcs, but there are a good number I can at least list at the top of my head. There are the Yongle, big furred up Tauren that resemble more of a yak, commonly known in Pandaria. The Tonka, very furry and resemble bison. They're found in cold climates in Northrend. the High Mountains. Tauren with antlers instead of horns, found with a lot of war paint on them. They're most commonly known in High Mountain, of course. These guys are actually on the data mined information and are the most likely for the next new subrace. I decided to put this one here as well, as we already technically have them, sort of, is the Grim Totem. Not too different from the regular Tauren model, they're just black with tattoos, though Blizzard could make them more different. As I said before, Blizzard could just be doing one sound subrace for now for each of the races, as to be fair with the others, that do not have as numerous amount of subraces. And it looks like they are choosing the High Mountain Tauren, which I found both interesting and exciting, since I want those antlers, dang it. I also adore the idea of Mela joining the Horde with her people, and maybe hooking up with Bane as a couple. Wink wink nudge nudge. Listen, this is my ship, and I am going down with it, like I did with Illidan and my Ev.
I don't care, I ship it, I don't care.
They could surprise us and add an abundance of subraces, but I think the more likely will sadly happen, and we're just going to see the High Mountain as the new subrace for the Tauren. Next we have the Trolls of the Horde. They're both an easy race and a hard race, considering there are so many tribes of the Trolls, but there are so many, gosh darn many of them. Saying this here, as far as I could tell, the Jungle Trolls look almost exactly similar to the Darkspear. So they won't be listed, but should they look different or are different, please correct me in the comments below or something. First off, we have the Zandalari Trolls, or the original Trolls. Very gray and pale colored trolls that stand upright and have glowing eyes. These ones are commonly found around Pandaria and the Isle of Thunder, and to me they seem the most likely. Then we have the Amani or the Forest Trolls, big, bulky, and green. These guys are mostly found in the northern parts of the Eastern Kingdoms. Next we have the Drakari or the Ice Trolls, and they're very darkish blue and muscular, much like the Forest Trolls. These guys are found mostly in the eastern parts of Northrend, and are also found in Dun Morogh. Lastly, we have the Faraki or the Sand Trolls. They have a very tan skin, and are very thin and resemble more of the Darkspears in height and weight. They're mostly found in the southern reaches of Kalimdor, mostly in Daenerys. I believe that we'll be getting a story with each of our new subraces, kind of like a hero class, but instead it's a hero race for each of your races. Since I see it as more likely that the story will be revolving around the Zandalari, I see they are the very likely choice as far as the subrace goes for the Trolls. Similar to the Orcs, many of these could just be added as a new skin tone, as far as I'm concerned. Meanwhile, the Zandalari look the most distant. However, if they do make them a subrace, I would believe that a change in its skeleton from a Night Elf to something a little bit more unique though, because it looks too much like the Night Elf and I wouldn't want them to reuse that skeleton. But I could be wrong and they could just use the Night Elf skeleton with the Zandalari subrace. However, since the Raven Tusk are already members of the Horde, I could see them giving us the Forest Trolls as a subrace instead. Again, I feel like they'll just be doing a singular subrace to be fair, but they could add new skin tones, hairstyles, and etc. Psst, give trolls beards, please! Next up we have the Forsaken, or in this case, the Undead. This just might be one of the shortest lists on here, because it boggles my mind at how they'll give these guys as a subrace. Not everything on here are too factual, a lot of it is really just me guessing. Anyways, carrying on. First up is the possibility of Dark Rangers or Undead Elves. These guys are commonly found around Sylvanas and are mostly female, though I believe this could change with the coming of the times, and the inclusion of a Banshee in Legion. Now, while they are mostly strictly Dark Rangers, I could see Sylvanas becoming more open with the idea of her people possessing the bodies of fresher corpses, or taking on different roles than Rangers, or something. Next, not too different from the Dark Rangers, is fresher humans. This one is definitely in need of explaining and is definitely similar to the Dark Rangers. Basically, Sylvanas found a way to make her and her people more fresh through a ritual with the use of Valkyr. For further explanation, I highly recommend the reading of the World of Warcraft short story, Dark Mirror. But basically, you kill a relative with that ritual and take on a less rotted form. This would make for an amazing and awesome questline, but you would basically be a much more pale-looking human with red eyes instead of yellow. I could see them doing this, maybe, but again, it's hard to say. They could just make a Forsaken look more alive or something, rather than just reusing the human model, and I don't know. Again, Forsaken are probably the most boggling and difficult for me. Maybe they could add skeletons, or the other races as undead, but I just don't know. The ones I listed seem the most likely, but I just really don't know. Perhaps they could add an undead Rykul as a form of subrace, if they add living Rykul as a subrace for the humans. That'd be cool too. Anyways, moving on. Coming right up after the Forsaken are the Blood Elves, or Sindori. These guys actually are a lot easier than the Forsaken, and we might actually end up stealing one of the Forsaken ideas with this one. First is probably the easiest one here, since it's apparently been data mined already for the Horde, and that is the Shal'dorei or Nightborn. They look more similar to the Night Elves, but function more like the Blood Elves or High Elves, with their reliance on magic. They're a very periwinkle color, at least in my eyes, or maybe a paler looking purple that shines like a crystal. I don't know, I'm not the best with details and colors. They're commonly found on the Broken Isles, and mostly in Suramar. These are, of course, the most likely, since they were data mined. But I could be wrong. Second are the High Elves. Now this is a very mixed one. This is definitely more of an Alliance variant than a Horde one, but I could see them making it work maybe more as a subrace for the Night Elves, but at the same time they could do it for the Horde too. They're basically Blood Elves with blue eyes instead of green, and lack the fell corruption that our elves do. Could just get this as a customization option instead of it being a subrace. They mostly can be found in Dalron. Third one, and the final one, is we're going to borrow the one from the previous list, and it's the Undead Elves, or the Dark Rangers. Dead-looking elves with pale-like skin with red eyes. I would see it as something more fitting to the Forsaken, but I could see it somehow working with the Blood Elves. Would make for an interesting questline of Sylvanas or her Valkyr bringing an elf for once back from the dead instead of a human. I mean, she's done it before, technically. They're mostly found around Sylvanas and Forsaken-controlled areas, so northern and eastern kingdoms, technically. Or Northrend. Some others I could see, but also couldn't see, were the Wretched and Half-Elves. I am sure I am missing more, but honestly I think you guys are just bound to get the Shal'dorei, which they're a pretty sick race, and it's awesome that the Horde will be possibly getting 2 races from the Broken Isles that were originally neutral. As a side note, with the inclusion of subraces, I think it would be pretty cool to have your own subraced leader. So for example, the possible Mok'Nathal subrace for the Orcs would be led by Rexxar. Mela for the High Mountain Tauren subrace. Nathanos, I guess, for the Forsaken subrace. And Thalrisra for the Nightborn subrace. But let's get back on topic to the shortest 2 of this here list. The Goblins. Oh gee, oh boy, this one is maybe even shorter than the Pandaren one. Here, it wasn't intended for a short joke either. Anyways, That's pretty saddening since I love the goblins, but let's do our best to try and come up with ideas here. But while I do think you guys might get cheated of a subrace, maybe, I think you'll at least be getting your updated models finally in this expansion. Hopefully. First up is the probably easiest one I could think of, gill goblins, which are those sea-finned goblins you'll find in a ton of underwater areas, mostly in Vajir and I think Swamp of Sorrows. They're very aquatic looking, with fins and such. Not much is known about them, other than they were created by Horde, a goblin scientist, either on purpose or accident. I guess these are the most likely because they're the only subrace I really know of the goblins, but hey, I could be wrong. Then we have the hobgoblins, which are honestly just big muscular goblins that resemble that of ogres more than goblins. Personally, I don't see this one as a possibility since I think ogres as a playable race are more likely than these fellows. It's kind of hard to come up with a subrace for these fellows, but again, I think you guys will be getting your new models this expansion. Blizzard might have to come up with a new subrace for you guys altogether. Perhaps they could make the goblin cartels look different from each other, or something. Maybe they could add a fat goblin like how Galilix looks. Let's just move on to the Pandaren. Poor Gobos. Poor Gobos. Lastly for the Horde, we have the Pandaren. And despite contrary belief, I do like these chubs of kung fu fluff. They're a favorite to me, at least. But a subrace for these fellows? That's actually quite challenging. Again, I'm not sure if the newer races of the Horde will even get subraces. The best I could think of for these guys is to maybe make them more distinct from their Alliance counterparts, or maybe from the Island Pandaren on Pandaria. Make the Pandaren on the Wandering Isles and Pandaria look different would be challenging, but also pretty gosh darn neat. Just don't know how they could do that, but still. Another idea I could come up with was the possibility of furbogs as a subrace for the Pandaren. They're pretty similar in a lot of ways, and maybe could be a distant cousin like the Tauren and the Tonka or something. They were even mistaken for furbogs a few times. With them already being pretty neutral, I guess it could work, but I can also see it not working too well. This is probably a good time as any to say my piece on goblins and Pandaren, even though I like them. In my eyes, they're the hardest to make a subrace for. This might happen since they are such a new race, but it's possible that we might only see subraces for the Anilla and Burning Crusade races, similar to Warlords of Draenor. But maybe I'm wrong, and Blizzard will cook you guys something to snack on. I'm mostly hoping for the goblins to get an updated model, and the Pandaren to look different from their Alliance counterparts. The same with the Horde, to look more vicious, I guess. I don't know. But this is where I'm going to end my video. I am sorry if I had to explain some of them more near the end, but that's what happens when you have trouble coming up with a subrace for every member of the Horde. But I hope you liked my video regardless, and maybe you'll subscribe and spread this video around. I'm Skull Shorties, and I'll see you all in my next video. Likely talking about Blizzcon. Woo! Bye!